Hey there. I usually don't go through specific policies that much as to why Western independence is so important, but I do want to hit on one today because it just went through the federal government parliament and it has been entrenched, and even conservative members of parliament supported this. This is a policy that infringes on individual rights, it infringes on the free market, it infringes on interprovincial trade, it unevenly benefits Quebec. Yes, this policy has it all, and it's supply management. And I'll explain a little more what that's about for those unfamiliar with it. But the thing that really drives this home is that conservatives will support it too federally because they're terrified of upsetting Quebec. That's where we get back to why it doesn't matter what party we have in power in Canada. The system is broken and slanted in favor of Quebec no matter what we do. So supply management. This is a policy for agriculture that's been in place, I believe, since the 60s. Other countries did this back then too, but they got rid of it. Canada's like the last holdout with these crappy supply management policies. These are Soviet-style policies. They apply to dairy, poultry, egg production. Not any other farm industry has to stand on its own. But under supply management, what happens is they actually set maximums that people are allowed to produce, and only certain people are allowed to produce. You have to buy a quota, and it is illegal for you to sell your products if you don't have that government issued quota, and it's illegal if you sell anything more than what's in that government quota. And they will crack down hard. This made the news recently. A farmer in southern Alberta dared to sell eggs without a quota. Yes, he had more than 300 chickens, which makes it illegal. He's a high criminal. 5 RCMP cruisers showed up at his house and arrested him. He was in jail for 2 days. We can't keep... Here in Canada, we had a judge let a child molester free. I wish I was making this sort of thing up. Because he said the man only had a modest amount in his child porn collection. Yeah, so he got no jail time because it was only a modest amount of children being raped. So we will put somebody in jail for selling the eggs they produce on their own farm. But we can't. Like, that shows how broken and twisted Canada's system is. And what it also does, so the system artificially keeps the prices of all these products high. It's made to protect the farmers. So, but realistically, I mean, pork farmers are still getting by. Wheat farmers are still getting by. They used to have the wheat board, which was a single place where they had to sell. Rick Strankman stood up for himself. This was back in the 90s. And he dared to sell his own grain across the border. And guess what? They threw him in jail. You know, people get upset. Well, no, the supply management fart catchers get upset when I go after supply management. When I call it a Soviet-style system. But what else can you call it? You own a farm. You produce chickens or eggs or dairy, but you don't have that special limited government permission to sell your product. So you will be thrown in jail if you dare to sell it. And this has been going on a long time. My wife grew up, and there was a small dairy farm she lived on. Her father, had a quota for cream. He was allowed to skim the cream from the number of cows they had, which weren't a lot, and sell that. But he didn't have a quota for milk, which is what's left behind with the cream. So you used it for family use. You gave it to some friends. If you had pigs, you fed it to the pigs. Otherwise, you poured it in the ditch. That's really what happens. And that's when there were small family farms. One of the things that the BS artists who speak up for supply management claim is it protects the family farm. Really? Really? Let's look at the numbers again. 1970, there were 145,000 dairy operations in Canada. Now, there are 9,200. Yeah, it's really protected it well. What it's done is actually consolidated it all into large corporate farms. The small family farms can't afford those quotas. The large corporate operations buy up those quotas. By the way, when we talk about profit margins in groceries, when people are screaming because Loblaws made 3.6%, dairy farms have profit margins up in the 20% range, guys. Who's screwing people who are eating more? Dairy and poultry. I mean, that's food that goes into everybody's, it's essential for us. The average Canadian family is spending as much as $500 a year more on groceries just because of supply management. These stats were found by Martha Hall Findlay, who was a former Liberal member of Parliament. This policy is horrible. It's robbing Canadians. It's screwing farmers. It's putting people in jail. So why are they so fixated on keeping it, though? Why are they so hung up on keeping the system? Well, Quebec, of course. Quebec makes up 23% of the population of Canada, but they have 36.5% of the dairy farms in Canada. They have the bulk of the dairy operations. They have a monopoly, and they keep pulling in more of these quotas into Quebec. I mean, we have the prairie provinces, which are some of the best agricultural producing land on the planet. We could sustain loads and loads of dairy farms, but we're not allowed because it would go beyond the quotas that are set. So we all pay a higher price. Plus, we can't export as much. Plus, supply management costs us a fortune in trade deals because other countries get upset with us, pointing out this ridiculous system, because packed into that quota system are protections. We have tariffs against American butter that get into the hundreds of percent to protect the local dairies. It's absurd. And dairy industry only makes up 1% of Canada's industries. I mean, it's important. It all adds up. It could probably make up 2 or 3% with our agricultural lands if we got rid of this Soviet-style system. But we end up threatening all of our other industries and our trade deals because we're protecting that 1%. Why are we protecting that 1%? Because it's Quebec. It's always all roads lead to Laurentian Canada, particularly Quebec. And think of the waste. This has been documented. Up to 6 billion liters of milk have been dumped down the drain in Canada since 2012. 6 billion liters wasted. This is disgusting. When people are fighting to pay their bills and farmers are dumping billions of liters of milk down the drain because it's illegal for them to sell it. They made too much, they did too well on it, so they dump it down the drain. Because you know what would happen? Well, if they put more in, the price might come down a little bit. Can't do that. Carefully controlled. So they'd rather screw every Canadian family on their grocery bills than allow a farmer to sell a liter more than he has a quota for. And it was exposed a couple of years ago with a farmer who showed a video dumping tens of thousands of liters of milk down the drain because he was frustrated as a dairy farmer saying, look at this waste. I want to show everybody this waste. And that video went viral. And guess what? He disappeared. The dairy cartels took him out, not in the physical killing sense, but pretty much in every other. He pulled that video. He hid from the public eye. He doesn't speak to the media any longer because the controlling dairy cartels got in there and basically said, we're going to run you 100% out of business if you don't shut the hell up. And the cartel is exactly what it is. In any other industry, that kind of price fixing would be illegal. But here we have it illegal for producers to sell their own products. It's absolutely ridiculous. But how do we break out of it? Well, I tell you what, independence is the only way we're going to break out of it, guys. Like I said, I mean, any capitalist, any free market person cannot support this system. You can't. You're lying if you say you're a conservative and you support this. You're absolutely lying. This is the opposite of conservative. This is government manipulated markets against Soviet style. Yet, when it came before the House of Commons, because the Bloc Québécois, here we are, a minority party in the House of Commons put a motion forward saying we have to make it even harder to possibly adjust the supply management system. This just happened the other week. Brought in a bill, I think it was 202. So that would say that supply management is off the table in any trade negotiations ever. And look at that, like little monkeys. The Conservative members of Parliament came forward and said, that's a good idea, we'll support that, because they didn't want to piss off Quebec. Who are you guys, you wimps? That's what you are, is you're wimps. You won't stand up for your actual principles. You aren't conservatives. You're just playing the system. You want to keep your seats. I believe 49 Conservatives voted against the bill. So credit to you guys who actually showed some courage. And guess what? Between the Socialist NDP, the Socialist Bloc Québécois, and the Socialist Liberals, and the Socialist Greens, that bill would have passed anyway. Even if every single Conservative voted against it, the bill would have passed. So why did you guys vote for it? Because you're pandering at the expense of all Canadians. And, you know, I get a little crabby with it, but I also understand that, you know what? if they don't pander to Quebec, you can't win office in Canada. That's the way it works. That's why they voted to keep Quebec. They threw out representation by population, even in the House of Commons, when they voted to protect Quebec keeping a seat, even though their population growth wasn't keeping up with it, because they're special little Quebec. So even though we're producing, we're working hard, we're doing everything we can in the West, thus people are moving here and making a life for themselves. And Quebec, of course, is lazy and takes equalization and has market control and it oppresses people with different languages and different religious beliefs. They've been losing population growth relative to the rest of the country. We don't gain seats for our population growth, and Quebec has theirs guaranteed. The system is broken. I saw a commenter on one of my past videos recently saying, what would be faster? Why are we wasting time on independence? We could get the Liberals out sooner than we could get independent. Well, yes, but you got to understand the problem isn't just the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party is the consequence of the broken system. And none of these things will change no matter who gets in. So even if the Conservatives have won a majority, we've already seen from their behavior, they would not get rid of policies like supply management that rob the West. They won't, because they want to stay in power. That means pandering to Eastern Canada. That's the nature of it. So that's why I wanted to hit on that particular policy, because it's so outrageous. Not enough people pay attention to that. But this sounds like something out of a dystopian novel. An old man with a farm with a number of chickens, actually rounded up by the police and thrown in jail because he sold eggs. Yes, people get crabby when I say Canada is broken, but how can you not look at that image and say anything else when the parliament of the country has entrenched that system? As well, when you have people struggling to pay the bills and we're dumping billions of liters of milk down the drain rather than give them a break on the price. Is that not broken? And the price of chicken is as well, because you can't have chickens without having one of those quotas and sell, for meat. So we're getting robbed. I mean, look at the most affordable meat on the aisles these days. It's pork. Well, why? Because it's not supply managed. And I'm not hearing about thousands of pork farmers going out of business. No, it works. New Zealand and Australia, they used to have the same garbage system. They got rid of it. And guess what? Their dairy operations are flourishing. They're exporting. They're doing better. But we can't crack out of ours because, Quebec would get upset. We know how to crack out of it, guys. Independence. It's the only path. Canada's broken. And supply management, again, is just another symptom, another consequence of what Canada's broken system offers us. So we've got to work to get out. We can't change the policies within the parliament. We've got to get out of the system altogether. Independence is the only path. And that's why I'll keep up this series. And as always, I'll keep flogging the book, but there's truth to it. The Sovereigntist Handbook, because this is what we got to do, guys. We got to train ourselves to be better advocates for it. So I don't think I even talk about supply management in there, but I talk about all the other things you can do to help move us closer to independence. And if people ask about specific policies, that's one good one to give them, is the supply management one, just to show how outrageous, how ridiculous, and how economically ruinous Canada's system is, and how little regard there are for our rights when we will jail people for selling farm products. It's nuts. So there's a link to to grab a copy if you like below of the book. As well, for those watching this video, here in June, July 1st, Albertans Day is going to be in Mirror. Chris Scott is putting that together. It's going to be a really good time out there, a whole day. Tamara Leach is going to be there playing with her band. There's going to be vendors. Actually, I'm going to be set up at a table. Jane's going to have some of her barn quilts for sale. It's going to be food, great people gathered, collected, camping, hanging out, spending the day. So, hey, if you can find your way up to Mirror for Albertans Day on July 1st, get up there, say hi. It's going to be fun. Either way, thanks for tuning in. We're going to get there, guys. We're on the road to independence.